Hey everybody, Gil here with the Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser, and in last week's episode we did that craftsmanship video all about practicing making hand-cut dovetail joints so that we could make our window frames and have it match the aesthetics of the boat. If you didn't see that video, I'll put a link to it right up here. My wife and I do videos every single week about our lifestyle, living aboard and refitting our classic sailboat. If you think that kind of content is interesting, by all means share it with others and give it a thumbs up and a like. In this week's episode, we're going to do a couple of small things again. Got to make progress on some of this small stuff. I think I'm going to start working on inspecting the diesel tanks. I'm a little concerned. I just want to make sure that there's no sludge or gunk in them, and while they're exposed, maybe it's an easy way to get down inside and check them out before they ultimately put all the new fuel lines in. And then I'm also going to start working on finalizing the prep on the boom and also working on the Mizzen traveler car. And getting that all prepped up as well.
All right, so just looking forward here in the galley, I'm going to essentially step down in this section of the engine room, and then right on the other side of these primary filters is essentially the starboard tank. Unfortunately, the port tank is a little less accessible. It's actually under the sole, and part of it is exposed inside of this particular cabinetry. So I'm going to stick my head in there and see what it looks like. So Murphy's Law clearly states whatever we hope it's going to be, it probably won't. So there is one tank right there, and I don't see a lot of access to it, but at least it's open on the top. Unfortunately, there's the other one, and it's underneath the electrical connections for the inverter. So I'm going to reach back and leverage my camera to see what I can see back here. So in hopes to see which of those two were behind those cupboards, forward is to your right there. I'm going to come down into these steps that are below the upper and lower salon, and we'll take a look here. So the forward tank right here is a water tank. I can see the water pick up, and if we go toward this back one, that is my fuel tank, and I can tell because I can see the fuel line indicator on there. You can kind of see that large fuel line in the front right there. Essentially, you look in that and you see how full the tank is. So, unfortunately, this does not look like it has an access port, and that's really disappointing. I almost hate to verbalize what I'm about to say. I'm now starting to wonder, without a place to clean that out, all the work we did to certify the tank and make sure that it would pass a pressure test, I'm starting to consider if it makes sense to remove that tank and replace it with a polypropylene or something a little less corroded. I don't know. It's a lot to think about, but it almost looks like it could potentially be manageable to get out of there right now. Damn it, I hate when I have thoughts like this. Well, let me at least look at the one that I can get to. We got to do something. We got to progress a little bit while my mind reels. Alright, so here's my tank, and you can see the pickup lines here and here have been removed for the new fuel lines that are being worked. I clearly have a large access panel here, and I've unscrewed the manual screw cap. See if we can see just how much fuel is down in there. It's hard to tell, but it looks like quite a bit. I'll have to stick something down in there. Just a matter of loosening each of these up and removing these bolts. Alright, with all the screws removed, it's time to lift up this panel. Alright, that's what the panel looks like off and upside down. It's kind of an interesting gaskety goo in there. God only knows how much of that went down into the tank when they put that stuff on there. Let's see if there's any way we can see this here. I want to see if I can show you this. So right in the corner of the tank there, looks like some kind of sludgy stuff. I think we do need to clean this out of here. Well, I clearly have some decisions to make. I was able to open that panel. I can see down in the tank. What I'm thinking about possibly doing is I got to figure out where I can dump this fuel. If I can pump this out into some 5-gallon containers and get rid of it, right, if there's a disposal place, what I'm thinking about doing is using a line and draining the other tank, essentially hooking a pump to it and a transfer pump and pumping it into this tank where I can then pump it out and get rid of it. Not exactly the easiest way to do it, but I think it's a good way, and it lets me get everything out of that other tank, and then from there I can decide if I want to replace it or if I want to essentially run more diesel into it, see if there's any possible way I can try and clean it out, and that might just be running diesel into it, pumping it out, running diesel into it, and pumping it out. We'll have to see.
Well, in the end, I thought there was a place at the boatyard where I could dispose of the fuel, and it turns out I asked somebody at the boatyard. We're really not supposed to. It's more for oil disposal. So honestly, this is making my brain hurt. I'm really not sure what I should do here. I'm interested in y'all's feedback. If anyone has any experience with this, if you had old fuel, I drove over on the fuel. It was fine. It hasn't clogged the filters. I see that little bit of sludge in one of the tanks, but honestly, the rest of the tank looks really clean. I'm not seeing a bacteria level or anything else. I don't know, maybe that's at the bottom and it would be below the fuel. I feel like I have two sort of options here. I can pump all that fuel out and dispose of it and scrub the tank with a little bit of diesel and continue to pump out and dispose of it, and then refill it all with clean fuel. Or I can also hire a service. They have these fuel polishing services. They come out with a truck. Basically, they pump all the fuel out through a bunch of filtering systems and put it back in. I had a boat neighbor that did that. I thought it was fairly expensive, if I recall what he said. Maybe I'll call somebody and see what that would run. Maybe it's not significantly more than buying all that diesel that I would be disposing of. So really interested. If you'd leave a comment down below, I'd love to know what you think about this. But it's making my brain hurt. I think I'm going to work on something else that frankly doesn't make my brain hurt. I wish I was better at the mechanical stuff. I'm just not. Electrical, plumbing, woodwork, I'm good at that. Man, that mechanical, I'm a little baffled. So I got to get better in that area. I look forward to hearing your comments down below. So here's a little tip for you. As I was going through my video, I found this. When I am taking something apart that I think is going to be a little while before I put it back together, I often will video it and just give myself a little commentary on how this fits. I actually took off this gooseneck attachment, and I wanted to make sure it was very obvious when I went to put it back on exactly the way it goes. Shouldn't be hard to do, but I love having the reference in the event I ever need it. A couple of times over the last 5 or 6 years of living aboard, this has come in pretty handy, especially when taking screws apart or seeing the orientation of something in a cupboard. Well, as the night turned to morning, they started to prepare the boat for deck paint. This is exciting. So I'm back down at the boat. I've got a bunch of little things I'm going to get done. The first thing I'm going to do is start to prepare the boom, as well as the Mizzen main sheet traveler attachment. I want to get that down to bare teak and sand the surface down real good, get it prepped for Awlwood MA as well. I went ahead and picked up some of these card scrapers. If you've never used these card scrapers, they're phenomenal. I have a couple of different shaped ones. Square one is pretty obvious. It has this interesting curved one. These aren't too hard to sharpen, believe it or not. They actually work pretty well with a simple burnishing tool. You can either pull these toward you or you can push them away. If you push them away, you sort of use your thumbs like this and bend it just slightly, and that gives it the right angle. When you pull back, you lean it back at an angle like this. What you're trying to do is take this, I'm going to exaggerate this, but there's a burr that kind of comes off here at a curve, acts like a knife, and that's ultimately what we're trying to attack the wood with. And what I'm doing is Deb sanded this all down, but there's some varnish right here along the edge of the sail track. So I'm just going to present this at the angle we need. And what we want to see is that type of material coming off of there, not dust. That means we're truly scraping and cutting it off of there. Now what you want to do is keep that angle of attack at about the same the whole way, otherwise you'll have it chatter and scratch it. So this is just a little bit of rinse repeat. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this a quick sand and prep it for finish. Alright, so I've got the boom sanded down. It's about ready to go ahead and get varnish on it. I want to tape up some of the hardware that's on it, but other than that, I think I can start putting the primer and the Awlwood MA on. It's going to be the first time I've ever used Awlwood MA. I'm kind of looking forward to it. This right here is the Mizzen main sheet traveler, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the hardware, pull the cleats off of it, the sail track or the traveler track, as well as the flag holder. Pull all that hardware off and get that sanded down real quick. So here's this piece of wood. All the hardware is removed off of it. Went ahead and took the cleats and the track off. This is the small piece that the flagpole connects to on the bottom side of it. You can see the track. Interestingly enough, this was the spacer underneath the track. I'll need to make a new one of those out of hardwood. This is completely rotted. Went ahead and pulled all the main sheet off of it. And then over here we have the components. So we have the flagpole holder, both of the cleats that were on the end, and all of the screws, which I'll probably go ahead and replace. They're a little long. I mean, they stuck out the bottom of the thing a good 3/4 of an inch, so they're just too long for what was there. The funny thing is, these little things like this take a long time, but they're kind of necessary. So today's gonna probably feel good getting a lot of little things done, but you know, when you get done at the end of the day, you're not gonna look at it and go, "Way, it looks great."
because it's springtime in Louisiana, I don't want to risk getting anything wet. So I moved this stuff a little further into the shop. You can kind of see the boom here on the left. So I've got the boom set up right here. It's back about 12 feet or so from the screened edge in case it does rain a little bit. And then I've got the traveler rack right here. Just a good place to kind of hang it. I'm hanging it off of a ladder and a trailer, but I put it over here between a couple of trailers here, just so that it's it's far enough over here on the right and away from this opening in the event that it rains outside. And the roof is over the top of this, but not out there. So that should help protect it a little bit. All right, I've got the boom prepared with tape on it. I taped around all the bronze fittings and also the actual sail track. What's interesting is I mentioned I'm using Awlwood MA. I did decide to do something just a little bit different right here, and this is on the very end. I took the stainless piece off of there, and because that's end grain, I wanted to get a good thick plastic coating on that. So I essentially put, gosh, I must have done about 8 or 9 layers of epoxy, special clear, 105 and 207 mixed together, just to get that kind of plastic coated. If you think about it, end grain exposed, it's out over the back of the boat when it's up on the rig, so it's just a little easier to do now. And I figure I'll get this thing completely plastic coated. I won't have to worry about water soaking into those end grains. I always think of end grain much like the ends of a straw, right? They're little open capillaries that let the material flow into them. So this should at least flow in and clog it all up with clear plastic. She is all prepped and ready for some Awlwood MA. There we go. So here's my homework for the day. This system it starts with a clear primer. There's a paint thinner or brush cleaner, and then there's the actual gloss. I decided to go with a clear primer. They have a yellow and a red tint one, and I decided to go with the high gloss finish. So we'll see how she looks.
Well, it turns out this Awlwood MA is very, very specific on its application time. There's a certain amount of time between each coat that has to be applied. It's a fairly small window. I didn't want to drive 1 hour each way to do that, especially given that I might need to do a coat at 7 p.m. at night and another one at 6 in the morning. So I'm going to pack all this stuff up, bring it to our storage shed, and do it all there. So if I need to have Deb maybe do a coat or I do a coat, we keep on this very specific schedule. I want to make sure that we apply this stuff correctly. It's beautiful when applied right, and I'd like to learn how to do it on a small piece in a controlled environment. So in an upcoming video, we'll do that. But not today.
Well, I'm going to have to drive home this way because I need to take this home and do it where I can work that schedule out. Now I'm going to go ahead and sand a couple more spindles. I'm trying to get just a few done every day, so there's 3 there. I think I'll try and get those done. Alright, I got 2 spindles on this side of the rear anchor done, and 3 on this side. When I say done, I just mean rough sanded off with the electric sander. I still need to do the emery cloth and clean them up. And I'm about to do the tow rail here. Alright, we've got this sanded where the old metal plates were, and that's at least prepped. I need to do 220 on the whole thing before we actually varnish it, but we're close. Looks like a great big giant paper trap right now, but the decks are essentially done. I asked Michael if they were through because I wanted to take some of the masking off of the side of the house here so I can test out my template window frame, and he said they're done enough that they need to pull it all off to see if they have any finishing touches to do. So I'm going to pull some of this masking off of here.
Well, it's a nice change of pace. I'm in Boston doing some work. It's like 68 degrees out here this morning, and I'm heading into the office. So the joys, work, work, work. Luckily, I love what I do, which is a wonderful surprise for most people, I guess.
I saw Merck carry a hole saw down here. I wasn't real sure what it was about, so I decided I'd come take a look, assuming he had to get access to the top of the tank. I was wondering how they'd end up doing this. I guess I'm about to find out. Now I know what the hole saw and jigsaw were for.
It'll be interesting to see how they end up putting that down in. I don't know if they're going to put a little frame on the bottom side of it, and then you'll use a handle to lift it up. I'm not sure.
Well, everybody, that's going to be it for this week. I think we made some progress on a bunch of little projects. It's kind of nice to get some of those knocked out of the way. I still have a lot more work to do here. I need to get that Awlwood MA on the boom. That's definitely going to be on the list of items to get done. And we started having some weird noises coming out of the air conditioner on Last Affair. We're going to have to go take a look at that. So join us next week. Don't forget, give it a thumbs up. See ya.
Bye on Facebook. Take a picture.